80 years on this earth, I have witnessed many ups and downs, many sorrows and joys intertwined like an intricately woven tapestry. Each thread is a memory, each knot is a life lesson. And today, I want to unfold this tapestry for you, my children, so you can see both the vibrant patterns and the deep, dark areas in my life.
I want to pause for a moment. If you feel the love and are still listening to my story, please subscribe and hit the like button on the Grandparents Memories channel to show your support. Thank you so much.
I was born in 1949 on a plantation in the countryside that didn't even have a proper name. It was just Harrison Plantation, and everyone knew what that meant. Oh, where are my manners? I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Rachel Johnson, but everyone calls me Rachel. Ironic, isn't it? Because my life has been full of pain, but I don't want to start this story with sadness. I want you to understand where I came from, so perhaps you can understand where I went. I was born in a wooden sharecropper cabin at the back of Harrison Plantation. It was a small home but full of people and stories. Besides me, my mother Patricia Johnson, whom everyone called Patty, and my grandmother Lizzie Johnson, known as Lizzie, there was my grandfather William Bill Johnson, a quiet man we barely saw because he worked from sunrise to sunset in the fields. We also had my uncle Marcus Johnson, my mother's youngest brother, who at 15 was already working hard. Patty was the second of 4 siblings. The other 2, Uncle Richard Johnson and Aunt Jennifer Johnson, had already left. Uncle Richard tried his luck in the big city when I was a baby. Aunt Jennifer married a farmhand from a neighboring plantation and moved there. She would visit occasionally, bringing my 2 young cousins. Our house was cramped but welcoming. At night, I slept on a straw pallet with my mother. Grandma Lizzie and Grandpa Bill had a small room to themselves and were the only ones with a real bed. Uncle Marcus made do with a small, doorless space he called his room. It wasn't easy, but we managed. Dinner time was always a moment of gathering. We would all sit around the rough wooden table that Grandpa Bill had made. It was a simple life, but we didn't go without necessities. Grandma Lizzie's work as a folk healer and midwife ensured we always had food to eat. Many families couldn't pay with money, but they brought what they had: eggs, chickens, vegetables from their gardens, seasonal fruits. So our table always had a little more than just beans and rice. Grandma Lizzie was the heart of the home. She coordinated everything from meal preparation to caring for the sick in the regions who came seeking her knowledge of medicinal herbs and roots. My mother Patty stayed at home helping Grandma with household chores and attending to people who came seeking healing. She avoided going out as much as possible, especially when Mr. Bradley Harrison was around. My grandfather and uncle spent most of their time in the fields, leaving before sunrise and returning after dark. It was a hard life, but we had each other. But there were also silences, exchanged glances between the adults that I didn't understand, especially when the subject was my father. Nobody talked about him. It was as if he didn't exist, a void I felt but couldn't name. It was in this setting that I grew up. My mother, oh my mother Patty, was a woman of few words but with a deep gaze. She had the gentlest hands I've ever felt. She always looked at me in a strange way, as if she was afraid of something I didn't understand. I only came to understand much later why she had that look. Grandma Lizzie was different. She was a force of nature, always with her head held high. She knew every herb in the woods, every prayer to cure illness. People from the region came from far away to ask for advice, medicine, or for her to deliver their babies. Witch was what some called her behind her back, but in times of need, it was to her they ran. In those days, a black girl like me didn't have many choices in life. school, none of that. But I was curious, you know. Whenever I saw an old piece of newspaper lying around, I would stare at it, trying to understand all those scribbles. Though I couldn't attend formal school in those early years, my education came in other ways. Grandma Lizzie made sure I learned what she knew was important. She taught me to recognize herbs by their smell and appearance, to understand which ailments they could treat, and how to prepare them properly. Book learning is important, she'd say, but this knowledge has saved our people for generations when no doctor would come near us. I didn't understand anything, of course, but something about those papers fascinated me. My mother would get nervous when she caught me looking at these things. "Stop that, girl. You'll get in trouble," she would say. But Grandma was different. She would see me and give a little smile as if saying, "Keep asking questions, my granddaughter." What I didn't know, what no one would tell me, was the shadow hanging over our family. A shadow with a name, a face, and a form. Bradley Harrison, Colonel Edward Harrison's son, a man I should have called Sir, but my tongue refused to pronounce. Every time he passed near our little cabin, mounted on that imposing black horse, I felt my mother tense up. She would pull me inside, close the door, and remain silent for hours. I didn't understand. How could I? I was just a child born from a secret that weighed tons. Oh, my daughter, how I wish I could say all this is a thing of the past. But you know what? Sometimes when I look into certain people's eyes out there, I still see the same contempt, the same air of superiority. It's as if time has passed, but some things remain exactly the same. But don't misunderstand me. I'm not here to complain about life. I'm here to tell a story, my mother's story, my grandmother's story, my family's story, because these are stories that need to be told. You understand? This story isn't easy to hear, but it's a story that needs to be heard. I remember as if it were yesterday, the smell of fresh coffee on the wood-burning stove, mixing with the aroma of herbs that Grandma always had hanging from the kitchen ceiling. Rosemary, rue, black cohosh, each with its purpose, each with its story. "Rachel," Grandma would call me with that hoarse voice of hers. "Come here, my granddaughter." And there I would go, sitting on the small wooden stool worn by time, while she kneaded clay to make her pots. Her hands were magical, you know. They transformed that plain clay into vases, pans, and even dolls for me. While working, she would hum softly some songs that I had never heard anywhere else. Later I came to know they were chants from her ancestral land in Africa. "Grandma, why do you make these little marks on the pots?" I would ask. She would smile, showing the few teeth she had left, and say, "These here, my child, are the marks of our ancestors. Each mark tells a story." And so, without me realizing it, Grandma Lizzie was teaching me. They weren't the letters from the newspapers I so wanted to understand, but it was knowledge just as valuable. It was the wisdom of our people passed down from generation to generation. My mother Patty always kept an eye on these conversations of ours. Sometimes she would stand at the door listening. There were moments when she seemed to want to say something, but she always swallowed hard and went about her tasks. It was on one of those afternoons, when I must have been about 8 or 9 years old, that something different happened. We were there, Grandma and I, when we heard the gallop of a horse approaching. In an instant, my mother, who was in the yard, was at the door, her face pale with fear. "Mother," she said to Grandma, her voice trembling, "he's coming." I've never seen my grandmother move so fast. In the blink of an eye, she grabbed me by the arm and stuffed me inside an old wooden trunk that sat in a corner of the kitchen. "Stay quiet in there, my child. Don't come out for anything in this world. Understand? Before I could answer, the lid closed, leaving me in darkness. I heard heavy footsteps entering the house, a man's deep voice, and my mother speaking softly, almost in a whisper. I don't know how long I stayed there, curled up in that tight trunk. The smell of old wood mixed with the fear I felt, even without really understanding why. When the lid finally opened, I saw my grandmother's face, her eyes full of a sadness I had never seen before. "Come, my granddaughter," she said, helping me out. "It's all right now." But everything wasn't all right. I could feel it. My mother was sitting in a corner, crying silently. Grandma went to her, ran her hand through her hair, and murmured something I couldn't hear. That night, lying on the straw pallet I shared with my mother, I felt her tremble and sob softly. She would usually lie down and fall asleep quickly, exhausted from the day's hustle. But this night was different. I pretended to be asleep, but my heart was tight with pity for my mother. It was the first time I really felt the weight of the secret my family carried. After that visit from Bradley Harrison, my grandmother disappeared for a few days. I was 8 years old then, and I began to get desperate, thinking she had abandoned our house for good. When she finally returned, I was overjoyed, but noticed she and everyone else were always whispering inside the house. It wasn't until years later that I learned she had gone to gather special herbs and consult with an old healer from the next county over, preparing for what she feared might come. Let me tell you more about that time. Time kept passing, and I, a curious girl that I was, would daydream. Each day seemed the same as the one before, but something inside me was changing, growing without me really understanding what it was. You know one thing that drove me crazy with curiosity? That big house on the plantation. My God, how I dreamed of going inside. It was so big, so beautiful. I would spend hours looking at it from afar, watching people coming and going, imagining what it was like inside. My best friend Tanya Williams and I would spy and dream from a distance. It was an imposing building with those large windows, a porch all around, high roof. At night, when they turned on the electric lights, a rare thing in those days, the big house shined so brightly from a distance, as if it were made of gold. It looked like a palace from the stories Grandma told. I would wonder what it would be like to sleep in a real bed, not on a straw pallet on the floor. Would it be soft? Would it have sweet-smelling sheets? But what I wanted most, was to ride one of those horses. Oh my, what beautiful animals, always well-groomed with shining manes. Sometimes I would see Colonel Harrison's son, Mr. Bradley Harrison, riding by. He would gallop past, and I would imagine what it would be like to feel the wind on my face like that. I remember once when Tanya and I managed to get close to the stable. The smell of hay and horse was strong, but it wasn't bad. There was an Appaloosa horse that seemed to be looking at me. I approached very slowly and stroked its muzzle. I'll never forget how soft it was. At that moment, I heard someone shouting. It was the plantation foreman. "Hey, little nigger, get out of there. This place isn't for people like you." I knew well he was talking about me. Tanya, being light-skinned with her mixed heritage, could sometimes pass for white in certain company, but I was unmistakably black. I remember observing that none of their servants were black, but even so, I couldn't stop dreaming. I wanted so badly to understand why these things couldn't be for us too. Why I couldn't ride a horse, sleep in a good bed, eat tasty food. It was hard, seeing all that so close and yet so far away. Sometimes I would feel angry, other times sad, but always with that desire burning inside me. When I turned 11, I woke up on a hot summer morning and felt something strange. When I looked at my straw pallet, I saw a blood stain. The shock was so great that I screamed. My mother came running, looked at me and the pallet, and her face went as pale as paper. "Mother," she shouted to Grandma Lizzie, "the time has come." Grandma entered the room, looked me up and down, and sighed deeply. "Go get the cloths, Patty," she said to my mother. Then she turned to me. "Come here, my child. Let's talk." While my mother hurried out, Grandma said, "Rachel, you've become a woman today. Do you know what that means?" I shook my head, still frightened by the blood and their reaction. "It means your body is changing, that you can have children now." My heart froze. Have children? I could barely take care of myself. "But that's not all," Grandma continued, her voice becoming serious. "It also means you have to be very careful, especially with men." That's when my mother returned, bringing some clean cloths. She was nervous, her hands trembling. "Let me explain how to use these to contain the blood, daughter," she said. "You need to understand more about this blood. It's powerful. Some men go crazy when they know a girl has become a woman. You can't let anyone know, understand?" I nodded without really understanding why there was so much drama if they themselves said it was something natural for young women. It was during this time that I began to notice the looks from men on the plantation, looks that made me feel dirty just by passing nearby. And the worst of all was from Bradley Harrison, the colonel's son. When he rode by our house on horseback and saw me around, his eyes would follow me in a way that gave me chills. One night, I heard my mother crying softly. I approached the door of the room and heard her talking with Grandma. "Mother," she said between sobs, "I'm afraid. What if the same thing happens to her that happened to me?" "Calm down, my daughter," Grandma replied. "We won't let that bastard lay a finger on our girl." That conversation kept hammering in my head. I didn't know, but I felt there was a heavy secret, a secret that had to do with me, a secret that years later I would discover in the worst possible way. Time passed, and I got used to the changes in my body and my routine. I stayed at home with Grandma and my mother. At first I thought it would be boring, since I saw my friends from the neighborhood going out to work. But I soon discovered that the days were full of learnings and mysteries. Grandma Lizzie was known throughout the region as a folk healer and midwife. People came from far away to consult with her, bringing all kinds of problems, from stomach aches to heart ailments that no doctor could cure. "Rachel," Grandma called me one day, "come help me with these herbs." I went to her, curious. Grandma was separating a bunch of different leaves and roots. "This here is for Mrs. Gladys Williams. She has such anemia, you should see," Grandma explained, showing me some dark green leaves. "This dandelion root tea is good for cleansing her blood." Little by little, I learned the name of each herb, what it was for, how to prepare it. Grandma taught me with patience, mixing knowledge with stories of our ancestors. Everything my grandmother knew, she had learned from her grandmother, great-grandma Anna, who was truly African, born in Angola. Great-grandma Anna barely spoke our language when she arrived here, brought on slave ships as a young girl, but she carried with her ancient knowledge passed from mother to daughter for generations. Grandma Lizzie told me that Anna means Bishazpion, beautiful bed de flower, in her language, and that she knew the secret of every plant, every root. "My granddaughter," Grandma would say, picking up a handful of dried leaves, "this here is black cohosh. Great-grandma Anna called it master tamer. She said it had the power to calm even the fiercest overseers." And so, between the smell of drying herbs and the sound of Grandma's voice, I learned. Each plant had a story, each preparation a ritual. It was more than just medicine. It was our history, our resistance, stored in each leaf, each root. And of course, my dear mother already knew a lot too, not as much as my grandmother. As for my Aunt Jennifer, mother's sister, she didn't much care for these preparations, so it fell to my mother, who liked it very much, and I came to like it too. One day a young woman arrived with her face swollen from crying so much. Grandma received her with kindness, but sent me to the kitchen to make tea. Curious as always, I spied through the crack in the door. I saw Grandma take the woman's hand and speak softly. "I know what troubles you, my daughter. Don't worry, we'll find a way to help." After the woman left, Grandma called me. "Rachel, you saw that woman? She has a problem that many women face. Sometimes we get pregnant without wanting to or without being able to, and then we need help." I was shocked. "But Grandma, isn't that wrong?" Grandma sighed deeply. "My granddaughter, in this world there are many things that seem wrong but are necessary. We do what we can to help other women." That's how I began to understand that Grandma's work went far beyond curing bodily illnesses. She took care of the pains of the soul, of secrets that women couldn't tell anyone else. But not all were sad secrets. Many times, Grandma helped bring life into the world. I remember the first time I attended a birth. It was Mrs. Gladys Williams, Mr. Harold Williams' wife from the general store. In the middle of the night, we heard desperate knocks on the door. It was their son, breathless and frightened. "Mrs. Lizzie, my mother is having the baby. She needs help." In the blink of an eye, Grandma grabbed her midwife bag and called my mother and me. "Come, Rachel. Today you'll help me with something important." I spent the whole night helping Grandma and my mother, boiling water, getting clean cloths. When the baby, a strong and healthy boy, was born, I felt as if I had witnessed a miracle, despite the shock I felt when I saw the baby coming out from under Mrs. Williams. "See, my granddaughter," Grandma said as she cleaned the baby, "life is a cycle. We are born, we grow, we bear fruit, and we return to the earth. Our job is to help people in all these stages." Sometimes women would arrive with marks of beatings on their bodies and faces. Grandma would treat them with special care, applying ointments to their wounds and murmuring words of comfort. Once I asked why those women didn't leave home, go far away from their violent husbands. Grandma looked at me with sadness. "It's not always that simple, Rachel. Sometimes we stay not only because of chains you can see, but because of others that are inside us." During this time, I began to better understand my mother's fearful looks and the whispers in the dead of night. I realized women carried a world of pain and secrets. Grandma Lizzie was like a safe harbor for many of them, offering comfort and solutions where others could not. But what I didn't know, what I couldn't even imagine, was that soon I myself would need this safe harbor, that the fear in my mother's eyes would become reality. Oh, my daughter, I don't even like to remember that time, but if I'm going to tell it, I'll tell everything I remember, all those details. You see, it was in the summer of '61. I was 12 years old then, having turned 12 that January. Tanya had started working at the big house, that plantation house behind ours that I always daydreamed about. She was older than me, already 17, all lively. One day, Tanya came to our house all excited. "Rachel," she said, "there's going to be a big party at Colonel Edward Harrison's house. They need people to help serve, arrange things. Let's go." I got all stirred up. Imagine me at a party with important people. But then I remembered that Grandma Lizzie and my mother didn't like me getting near the big house, especially because of Mr. Bradley Harrison, the Colonel's son. They never told me why, but I saw the fear in their eyes whenever they talked about him. "Oh, Tanya, I can't," I said. "Mother and Grandma won't let me, I'm sure." But Tanya was stubborn as could be. "Well, you don't have to tell them. We'll go in secret, work, earn some money, and come back. They won't even know you left." I kept thinking and thinking. It was wrong to lie to Mother and Grandma, but curiosity was eating me up inside. And I don't know about you, but I was obedient. Yes, only the more they told me not to go, the more I wanted to go. It's a young girl thing, you know. We want to do exactly what's forbidden. And I was crazy to see what this fancy party was like. This was my chance. Plus, some extra money would be nice. Maybe I could buy a new dress for Grandma's birthday. On the day of the party, I told Mother I was going to bed early because I was tired. I waited for everyone to fall asleep and snuck out. Tanya was waiting for me near the peach tree. When we arrived at the big house, I was amazed. Everything so beautiful, so full of light, important people arriving in their cars, women with dresses that sparkled. I was embarrassed by my old clothes, but we entered through the back. Tanya took me to the kitchen. "Stay here helping wash the dishes," she said. "I'll serve out there. Be careful not to break anything, for God's sake." I spent a long time washing plates, glasses, silverware. My hands were already wrinkled from so much water. That's when I heard a commotion outside, people shouting, the sound of things breaking. Suddenly, Mr. Bradley Harrison, or Sir as people used to call him, entered the kitchen like a hurricane. He looked like he had been drinking a lot. He looked around, his eyes half crossed, until he saw me. "Hey," he said, his voice slurred. "What are you doing here? I feel like I know you from somewhere." I froze. I pretended I was just washing the dishes, but he was already coming in my direction. "Where do I know you from?" he insisted, looking me up and down. I tried to run, but he was faster. He grabbed me by the arm with such force that it left a mark. He pulled me out of the kitchen to the backyard. I screamed and struggled, but with the loud music from the party, nobody heard. What happened next? Oh, my daughter. It's even hard to talk about. He threw me to the ground, tore my clothes. I begged, cried, but he didn't care. The pain, the lack of air in my chest. My God, such pain. I thought I would die right there. When it was over, he got up as if nothing had happened, straightened his clothes, and before leaving, he even said, "Ah, the flesh of young ones is always tastier." I stayed there, sprawled on the ground, unable to move. I don't know how much time passed until Tanya found me. She was in shock, poor thing. She helped me get up, tried to clean the blood. "Let's go, Rachel," she said, crying. "Let's go to your house." But I didn't want to go home. How was I going to look at my mother, at my grandmother? They would know I had disobeyed, that I had gone to the party in secret. Tanya didn't know what to do. She ended up taking me to her house. Her mother, Mrs. Gladys Williams, almost fainted when she saw me. She took care of me, gave me a bath, applied some herbs she had learned about from Grandma Lizzie. When her father, Mr. Harold Williams, arrived from the bar, half drunk, he thought it strange, but he could barely stand up and went to sleep. Mrs. Williams had been a friend of our family forever, so she said, "My girl, we need to tell your mother. Spend this night here, quietly, and tomorrow I'll call your mother and your grandmother, who will surely be looking for you." But I didn't want to. I was ashamed, afraid. I spent the whole night tossing and turning on the improvised bed that Mrs. Williams had made for me in the living room. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Mr. Bradley Harrison's face, felt his hands grabbing me, the smell of whiskey on his breath. It seemed to have stuck to me. The next morning, while we were having coffee, Mrs. Williams hadn't even gone to call them yet. Of course, they would look for me there first, since they knew Tanya and I were very close. When Mother saw me, she ran to hug me, crying a lot. Grandma came too. I, who was sitting, got up with a lot of pain. They weren't understanding anything, and I, with my conscience weighing tons, immediately started apologizing. Mother, Grandma, for God's sake, forgive me. I swear I didn't mean any harm. Then Tanya also started explaining. I never imagined something like this could happen. I ask forgiveness. Rachel is not to blame for anything. It was me who convinced her to go in secret. Tanya started talking rapidly until Mrs. Williams intervened and spoke loudly. Wait. They don't understand anything. You see, Mrs. Patty, this age is complicated. My mother, with eyes wide with concern, held my shoulders and asked, Rachel, for God's sake, what happened? Where were you? Why are you in pain? Grandma Lizzie, with her forehead wrinkled with worry, added, My granddaughter, we were desperate looking for you. Tell us what happened. I didn't know where to begin. Tears started rolling down my face, and I felt like I had a knot in my throat. Tanya, seeing my despair, began, Mrs. Patty, Mrs. Lizzie, it was my fault. I convinced Rachel to go with me to the party at the big house. We were just going to help in the kitchen, earn some money. My mother went pale. Party at the big house? Rachel, you went there? I could only nod, tears falling non-stop. Grandma Lizzie sat down. It seemed like her legs had weakened. My God, what happened there? That's when I finally managed to speak between sobs. Mr. Bradley Harrison, he caught me in the kitchen, took me to the backyard. I didn't need to say more. I saw the horror in my mother's and grandmother's eyes. They understood immediately. My mother hugged me tightly, crying as much as I was. Grandma Lizzie stayed still, as if she had turned to stone. After a while she got up, her voice trembling with anger. Enough! This ends here. Let's go home now. We'll talk better there. On the way home, nobody said anything. When we arrived, Grandma locked the door and said, Now, my granddaughter, tell everything. Don't hide anything. And I told them. Told about the party, the kitchen, the drunk Mr. Bradley Harrison, told about the backyard, the pain, the fear, told about the disgusting words he said to me afterward. When I finished, the silence was heavy. My mother was sitting with her face buried in her hands, crying softly. Grandma Lizzie seemed to have aged 10 years, almost in a few minutes. It was then that my mother raised her head, her eyes red from crying so much, and said, My daughter, there's something you need to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago. She looked at Grandma as if asking permission. Grandma nodded slightly. Mr. Bradley Harrison, my mother continued, her voice trembling. He did the same thing to me many years ago. I was about your age. I was in shock. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. But then I began to speak, but couldn't finish. Yes, my granddaughter, Grandma Lizzie said, her voice tired. Mr. Bradley Harrison, he is your father. The world seemed to spin around me. Everything I thought I knew about my life, my family, had turned upside down in an instant. That's why we always tried to protect you, my mother explained through tears. That's why I never let you go near the big house. We were afraid he would recognize you. You have his eyes, you know, the same shape. He suspected, I think, Grandma added. but the Colonel made sure it was never acknowledged. We hid your connection to them as much as we could, but people had their suspicions. Oh, my daughter, this part is hard to tell, but I must. We stayed there, the three of us, crying, hugging for a long time. When we calmed down a bit, Grandma Lizzie stood up. I'll never forget how she was, firm as always, but with a sadness in her eyes that broke your heart. I'm going to prepare some herbs, she said seriously. You do exactly as I tell you, my granddaughter. You cannot, under any circumstances, get pregnant. And so it was. Grandma prepared that bitter, strong tea that went down burning. She explained everything to me, the right times to take it, how long I had to wait. By the end of the afternoon, I was already menstruating. She said it was a good sign, but that I needed to continue taking the tea until next month, to be sure. That's when a question popped into my head. If my grandmother knew how to do all this, why hadn't she done the same with my mother? I gathered courage and asked. My mother, who had been quiet all this time, began to cry again. Grandma sat beside me, took my hand, and began to tell the story. Your mother, Rachel, she said. The thing is, she was in love with Mr. Bradley Harrison. I was stunned by that. How could my mother be in love with that disgusting man? It's true, my daughter, my mother said, wiping away tears. I was foolish, a dreamer. I thought he really liked me. We met in secret. He promised me the world. Grandma shook her head, sighing deeply. Colonel Edward Harrison found out. Good heavens, that day he came here to our house, red with rage. He said if we didn't keep Patty away from his son, he would have us all killed and burn our house down while we were sleeping. He said his son wasn't going to mix with people of our colour. But, my mother continued, even after I stayed away, Bradley Harrison wouldn't leave me alone. He kept looking for me, saying he would stand up to his father, that we would run away together. Grandma interrupted. Until one day, when he saw that your mother was really determined not to be with him to protect us, he did what he did. My mother began to sob. Even after everything, even with all the pain and shame, I didn't want to get rid of you, my daughter. You weren't to blame for anything, and even after what he did, a part of me still... Patty! Grandma cut her off. Don't say that. That man is no good. Never was. I sat there trying to understand it all. It was too much for my head. My mother had loved that man who had hurt her so much, and he didn't even know I was his daughter. That's why, my granddaughter, Grandma said, hugging me, we always tried to protect you. We knew what he was capable of, but it didn't work out. She paused, her voice breaking. Forgive me, my granddaughter. Forgive me for not being able to protect you. Maybe I failed in not telling you the truth. No, Grandma, I said, crying too. It's not your fault, or Mother's. The fault is his. We stayed there, crying together, each carrying her own pain. Suddenly, an old memory came to me, something that had been buried deep in my memory but now seemed important. Grandma, I said, wiping my tears, remember that time you hid me in an old trunk? Why did you do that? I saw my mother and grandmother exchange a quick glance. Grandma Lizzie sighed deeply before answering. Oh, my granddaughter. That day it was Colonel Edward Harrison who came here. He came to call me to take care of his mother, who was very sick. We didn't know what the colonel wanted when he arrived. We thought it best to hide you, just as a precaution. If he saw a child here of that age, we would have to give explanations. I was surprised. I had never imagined the colonel asking for my grandmother's help. My mother lowered her eyes, and Grandma continued. The colonel made it very clear that your mother couldn't set foot in the mansion. He said his son, Bradley, was well married to a society woman, and he didn't want any trouble. And did you go, Grandma? I asked, curious. Yes, my child. Disease doesn't choose rich or poor, and my duty is to help those in need. Grandma Lizzie began to tell the details of that day, her voice becoming more serious, as if she were reliving each moment. I listened intently, trying to picture the scenes she described, filling in the gaps with my imagination as she recounted what had happened at the big house that day. When I arrived at the mansion, girl, I had never seen so much wealth together. The furniture all polished, soft carpets on the floor, paintings on the walls that seemed like they were going to speak to you. But in the midst of all that luxury, the colonel's mother was there, lying in a bed, more gone than here. What did she have, Grandma? I asked, fascinated by the story. It was a bad fever, my child. Do you know what that is? It's a disease that comes from the mosquitoes in the swamp. The poor woman was shaking like a twig, sweating cold, and from time to time she would become delirious, saying things that made no sense. Grandma continued, her eyes seeming to see beyond the walls of our simple house. Her room smelled of pharmacy medicine and fear. There were 3 or 4 servants around the bed, all in starched white aprons, but with faces that showed they didn't know what to do. The colonel himself was there, pacing back and forth like a crazy cockroach. They said even the priest had come to give a blessing. My mother added softly, "It's true." "Yes," Grandma confirmed, "but blessing doesn't cure malaria, my child. What that woman needed was ancient knowledge passed from mother to daughter for generations." Grandma Lizzie got up and went to the corner where she kept her herbs. She picked up a handful of dried leaves and showed them to me. "See this? This is willow bark. This is what the colonel's mother needed. But it wasn't just that. She needed baths with lemon balm to lower the fever, rosemary tea to calm the delirium, and some strong prayers I learned from my grandmother Anna. I imagined my grandmother, small and determined, in the midst of that mansion full of important people, doing what she knew best. And then, Grandma, what happened next? Oh, my child, it was a lot of work. I spent 3 days and 3 nights taking care of that woman. I slept right there on a mattress on the floor of her room. During the day, I prepared the medicines, gave baths, did massages. At night, I prayed and drove away the evil spirits. Grandma paused as if reliving those moments. On the 3rd day, when the sun was rising, the fever broke. The colonel's mother opened her eyes, looked at me and said, "Thank you, you brought me back." I could hear the pride in my grandmother's voice. Despite all the discrimination, all the prejudice, she had made a difference. The colonel was so grateful he wanted to pay me a fortune, Grandma continued, but I didn't accept money. I told him my gift was for helping, not for selling. And was that it? I asked, sensing there was more to the story. Grandma exchanged a quick glance with my mother before continuing. My mother looked away, a strange expression on her face, half embarrassed. "Before I left," Grandma said with a serious face, "the colonel said he regretted how he had treated us years ago, that he had been too harsh. He said that out of gratitude, he would leave us in peace from then on." I sat there trying to absorb all that information. It was a lot of history that I didn't know. "But Grandma," I asked after a while, "if the colonel promised to leave us in peace, why was Mother still so afraid when Mr. Bradley Harrison passed by here?" My mother, who had been quiet until then, finally spoke. "Because Bradley, he's not like his father. He doesn't care about promises or gratitude." I felt a chill run down my spine hearing this. I understood then that even with all the colonel's gratitude, even with all the respect they had for my grandmother, we were never really safe. After that conversation with my mother and grandmother, we agreed not to tell Grandpa Bill and Uncle Marcus. "They're too hot-headed," my grandmother said. "If they find out, they'll want to take justice into their own hands, and then we'll just get into more trouble." I agreed, even feeling a huge weight on my chest for having to keep another secret. But we didn't count on neighborhood gossip. A few days later, I was in the kitchen helping my mother when I heard the sound of an argument coming from the yard. I ran to see what it was and came face to face with a scene that froze my blood. Grandpa Bill and Uncle Marcus were going out the door, each with a piece of wood in hand, and Grandma Lizzie trying to hold them back. "You're crazy," Grandma shouted. "What are you going to do? Get yourselves killed?" Grandpa Bill, always so calm, was spitting fire. "Nobody does that to my granddaughter and gets away with it. I'm going to break that bastard in half." Uncle Marcus, younger and stronger, was already almost on the road. "Let's go, Dad. We'll finish him today." My mother ran and threw herself in front of them. "For God's sake, don't do this. You'll be arrested." That's when I understood. They had found out. But how? At that moment, I saw Mr. Harold Williams, Tanya's father, standing at the fence. He had a guilty look that didn't fool me. It was he who had told them, I was sure. Grandma Lizzie must have thought the same thing because she went after him like a jaguar. "You big-mouthed gossip! It was you who opened that mouth of yours, wasn't it?" Mr. Williams stammered. "Mrs. Lizzie, forgive me. It's just that Gladys told me, and I couldn't keep it in. I had to tell Mr. Bill. It's the girl's honor at stake." "Shut that mouth," Grandma shouted. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" But it was too late. Grandpa Bill and Uncle Marcus were already far away, heading toward the big house. My mother was crying, Grandma was cursing, and I just wanted the earth to swallow me up. We ran after them, trying to catch up. When we got near the big house, we saw a commotion on the porch. Grandpa Bill and Uncle Marcus were shouting, demanding to speak with Mr. Bradley Harrison. The servants were trying to hold them back, but were getting the worst of it. Suddenly, Colonel Edward Harrison appeared. He looked at the scene, and his voice thundered. "What the devil is happening here?" Grandpa Bill, without fear, pointed his finger at him. "Your son raped my granddaughter, and we've come to make him pay." I saw the colonel's face go pale. He looked around, saw that people were listening, and spoke low but firm. "Let's talk inside. Now." He made a gesture for the servants to release Grandpa and Uncle Marcus and ordered everyone inside. We stayed outside, trembling with fear of what might happen. I even thought it was just a matter of time before we heard a gunshot or something similar. A long time passed before they came out. When they finally appeared, Grandpa Bill and Uncle Marcus had a strange, confused look. The colonel came right behind them, as serious as ever. "Mrs. Lizzie," he called my grandmother, "you and your daughter can come in for a moment." Grandma and my mother looked at each other but went. They stayed inside for some time, and when they came out, they looked like they had seen a ghost. On the way back home, nobody said a word. Only when we arrived and locked the door did Grandma Lizzie explain. "The colonel knows everything. He knows about Patty. He knows about Rachel. He said he'll resolve the matter with Bradley." My mother, still pale, added, He wants us to leave town without a fuss." I was stunned. "What do you mean?" Grandpa Bill, still nervous, grumbled. "And that bastard Bradley is going to get away with it just like that?" Grandma shook her head. "The colonel said he's the one who manages the plantation." Uncle Marcus punched the wall. "This isn't right. He should pay for what he did. Calm down, my son, Grandma Lizzie said, putting her hand on Uncle Marcus's shoulder. The Colonel said he'll give us money for a house wherever we want, far from here. He told us to choose and then come back to settle everything. My mother, who had been quiet until then, raised her head. And are we really going? Just like that, without more ado? Grandpa Bill sighed deeply. And what choice do we have, Patty? Staying here with that monster loose out there isn't an option. And his father made it very clear that if anything happened to his son, all of us would pay dearly for it. So it was decided that Grandpa and Grandma Lizzie would go to the city to look for a house. I had a lump in my throat, thinking that I would have to leave behind everything I knew. My friends, Tanya especially, the Willow Creek where we used to play, even the peach tree in the yard that I liked so much. They were gone for a few days. When they returned, Grandma had a strange gleam in her eye. We found a house, she said. A good house, big, with a spacious yard for my preparations, on a beautiful street in Atlanta. Uncle Marcus frowned. And how much does this house cost, Mother? Grandma gave a little smile from the corner of her mouth. More than the Colonel expected, for sure. I understood immediately. It was Grandma Lizzie's revenge. She had chosen the most expensive house she could find just to make the Colonel pay dearly for what his son had done. The day came to return to the plantation to settle accounts with the Colonel. Grandpa and Grandma were going. I sat at the door of our house, staring at nothing. Grandma came and sat beside me. "What's wrong, my granddaughter?" "I want to go too," I said without looking at her. "No, Rachel. It's not a place for you." But I was determined. "Grandma, I need to. I need to look them in the eyes. The Colonel, Mr. Bradley Harrison. I need them to see who I am." Grandma was silent for a time, studying me. Finally, she sighed. "All right, but stay close to me the whole time, understand?" When we arrived at the big house, my heart was beating so hard I thought it would jump out of my chest. The Colonel received us on the porch, serious. Mr. Bradley Harrison was there too, half hidden behind his father, with a face like a dog that had peed on the carpet. Beside him, I saw a white woman, of course, young and beautiful, all dressed up, holding a boy in her arms. The child must have been about 4 years old and was the spitting image of his father. I swallowed hard, thinking that was my half-brother, a son of the life Mr. Bradley Harrison had chosen to have. Who knows how many half-siblings I had out there? We all went into the living room. I kept looking around at the expensive furniture, at the paintings on the wall, thinking that all of this could have been mine if things had been different. Mr. Bradley Harrison's wife sat on a sofa, the restless boy in her lap. The Colonel cleared his throat, glancing at his daughter-in-law. "Let's talk in my office," he said, gesturing for us to follow him. Bradley Harrison's wife didn't go. We followed the Colonel to a smaller room full of books and with a large, dark wood desk. Mr. Bradley Harrison entered last, closing the door behind him. The Colonel sat behind the desk, indicating some chairs for us. "Well then, Mrs. Lizzie, did you find a house to your liking?" Grandma straightened her spine, looked him right in the eyes, and named the price. I swear I saw the Colonel go pale. He turned to his son, furious. "See, Bradley? See the damage your whims are costing me?" Mr. Bradley Harrison lowered his head. "Forgive me, Father. I swear it won't happen again." During the entire conversation, I noticed that both the Colonel and Mr. Bradley Harrison avoided looking directly at me. Now and then they would cast quick glances in my direction, but would quickly look away, as if my presence deeply bothered them. They addressed only my grandparents, dealing with the business as if I weren't even there. I was shocked by that attitude. It was as if I were invisible, or worse, as if I was something they wanted to forget existed. Anger began to bubble inside me, mixed with a sadness I couldn't explain. Grandma Lizzie, sensing my discomfort, put her hand on my shoulder as if to say, "Calm down, my granddaughter." But it was hard to stay calm seeing those men, my biological father and grandfather, treating me as if I were nothing. The colonel continued without looking at me. "Well, since we've reached an agreement about the amount, I'll arrange the payment." The colonel opened a drawer of the desk, revealing an impressive amount of money. He began to count and separate the bills, forming several bundles. Even after separating the amount that Grandma Lizzie had mentioned, there was still plenty of money left in the drawer. "Here is the money for the house and for your new start," said Colonel Edward Harrison, stacking the bundles of bills on the table. "I hope this definitively closes our pending matters." Grandpa Bill, who until then had been quiet, spoke with a firm voice. "You can be sure of that, Colonel. After today, you will never hear from us again." I was impressed by the amount of money. It was more than I had seen in my whole life. And to think that even after giving us all that, there was still so much left in the drawer. This only showed how rich they were, and how poor we were. Mr. Bradley Harrison remained silent, his eyes fixed on the floor. It seemed like he wanted to disappear from there. I felt a pang in my chest. It was strange to think that this would be the last time I would see these people who, like it or not, were part of my history. And what hurt me the most was Mr. Bradley Harrison's silence. Not a word, not a look, not an apology. The colonel handed an envelope to Grandma Lizzie without even looking at her properly. "I hope it's enough for a new beginning far from here." Inside that envelope was more money than our family had ever seen. The colonel had paid handsomely to keep his son's crimes quiet and to ensure we'd leave the area for good. It was blood money, but Grandma was determined to use it to build us a better future, one where we wouldn't have to depend on the likes of the Harrisons ever again. Grandma took the envelope, checked it, and nodded. "It will be more than enough, Colonel." We got up to leave. I expected, I don't know what exactly, maybe an apology, a word, anything from Mr. Bradley Harrison, but nothing came. His silence weighed more than any word that could have been said. When we were leaving the office, I heard Mr. Bradley Harrison murmur softly, "Father, The colonel cut him off immediately. "Enough, Bradley. You've done enough damage." We left the big house in silence. I felt strange, as if I had just lived through a bad dream. The disappointment was like a bitter taste in my mouth. Not even a sorry, not a look of regret. Nothing. On the way back to our house, Grandma Lizzie finally spoke. "You were very brave, my granddaughter. I know it wasn't easy to be there." I swallowed the knot that was forming in my throat. "They barely looked at me, Grandma. It's like I don't exist for them. And he didn't even apologize." Grandpa Bill snorted. "And it's better that way, my granddaughter. People like them don't deserve even a glance from you." But I knew it wasn't that simple. As much as I hated to admit it, a part of me had expected what? Recognition? Regret? A simple, "I'm sorry"? I couldn't say. Grandma took my hand. "What matters is that we're together, my child. They may have the money and the name, but we have something much more valuable. We have each other." I looked at her, at the strength in her eyes, and tried to smile. She was right, of course, but still, I felt a weight on my heart, thinking of all that could have been and never would be. of the apology I would never hear, of the father I would never have. The next day, the sun had barely risen when we started loading our things into the old freight truck that Grandpa Bill had managed to get. It was a noisy vehicle with peeling paint and a smell of oil you could smell from far away, but for us at that moment, it was what would take us to a new life. The farewell was harder than I had imagined. Even with all the bad thing that had happened there, that place was the only home I had ever known. I took one last look at the peach tree in the yard, at the path that led to the creek where I used to play with my friends. I felt a lump in my throat when I saw Mrs. Gladys Williams and other people my grandmother had helped over the years coming to say goodbye. "Go with God, girl," Mrs. Williams said, hugging me tight. "May you find peace in this new life." As we were settling into the truck, I heard some whispers. I glanced over and saw some women talking quietly, looking at me with pity and curiosity. Everyone there knew what had happened to me, the real reason we were leaving. What bothered me most were the comments I had heard without meaning to in the last few days. There were people saying that some families were envious of us, envious, as if what happened to me was some kind of luck. I heard it said that there were even those who wished their daughters would go through the same thing just to have the chance to get out of there. That left me confused and sad. How could anyone think such a thing? My mother cried softly as she said goodbye to her friends. Uncle Marcus pretended to be busy arranging things in the truck, but I saw him wipe away a hidden tear. My Aunt Jennifer came with her husband and children. Grandma left the address for them. I heard her say that if her other children showed up, they should look for us at the new address. When the truck stopped in front of the house, I was speechless. Our new home was a 2-story Victorian-style house, painted a soft yellow, with a front porch and a backyard. Compared to our old sharecropper cabin, it looked like a royal palace. "Is this really it?" I asked my grandmother, still not believing. She smiled, her eyes shining. "Yes, my granddaughter, our new home." We started unloading our things, and that's when I noticed some neighbors had come out in front of their houses and were looking at us with unfriendly faces. I overheard a woman whispering to her husband, "Look, a black family moving in here. There goes the neighborhood." I felt my face burning with shame and anger. But Grandma Lizzie, who had heard it too, lifted her head and said loudly, "Good afternoon, neighbors. I hope we can be good friends." Her determined manner made the gossips retreat in embarrassment. Once again, I felt proud of my grandmother. We entered the house, and I was amazed. The floor was polished hardwood without a single hole. The walls were smooth and well painted without any cracks. There was a spacious living room, a large kitchen with a wood-burning stove in one corner, and a gas one on the other side. "Look at this, my child," my mother exclaimed, her eyes wide with surprise. "2 types of stoves. We can choose how we want to cook." We climbed the stairs and discovered 4 bedrooms on the upper floor. Grandma Lizzie and Grandpa Bill took the largest, which even had its own bathroom inside. My mother and I got separate rooms, something we'd never had before. Uncle Marcus got the smallest room, but it was still bigger than the corner where he used to sleep in our old house. When I entered my room, I could hardly believe it. I had a real bed with a soft mattress and clean sheets, a dresser for my few clothes, and even a small desk for studying. "Grandma," I called out, unable to contain my emotion. "This is the first time I'll sleep in a real bed." Grandma Lizzie hugged me, her eyes moist. She explained that she had bought the house fully furnished from a couple who were moving to another state and had to sell quickly. I saw my mother sitting on the bed in her room, running her hand over the mattress as if she couldn't believe it. I never thought I'd have a room just for myself, she murmured. Uncle Marcus appeared at the door, grinning from ear to ear. Folks, there's a shower that heats the water by itself. We don't need to heat water on the fire to bathe anymore. We spent the rest of the day arranging our things, exploring every corner of the new house. The backyard was large, with plenty of space for Grandma Lizzie to plant her medicinal herbs. There were even some fruit trees, a peach tree, an apple tree, and a lemon tree. When night fell, we gathered in the kitchen for dinner. Grandma had made beans with rice and cornbread, simple food, but it had never tasted so good. "It's strange, isn't it?" said Uncle Marcus, looking around. "We're here in this beautiful house, eating at the kitchen table like important people, but the food is the same as always." Grandpa Bill, who had generally been quiet in recent times, spoke up. "That's because what's important hasn't changed, son. We're still us, just in a better place now." That night, lying in my new bed, I thought about everything that had happened. I looked around at my beautiful room and heard the sound of my mother's laughter coming from the next room. She was talking with Grandma, probably still amazed at our new house. I understood that despite all the difficulties, I had won the lottery of life because I had a family that loved me, fought for me, and taught me to be strong. The next day, I woke up to the smell of fresh coffee. I went downstairs and found everyone in the kitchen. Grandma Lizzie was at the wood-burning stove making cornbread. She said it was to celebrate our first morning in the new house. "Today we rest," she said. "Tomorrow we begin our new life." We enjoyed the house, but in the following days, reality began to hit us hard. The excitement of the new house gave way to growing concern. We had left a bad place, but it seemed the problems had come with us in the move. Grandma Lizzie, my mother, and I went out to get to know the neighborhood. Grandma, full of hope, went door to door offering her services as a folk healer and midwife. But what we found was a wall of distrust and prejudice. "Folk healer? Midwife?" one woman said, wrinkling her nose. "We go to doctors here. We don't need those backward practices." Another wouldn't even open the door properly, just shouted from inside, "Get away from here! I don't want witch doctors at my door!" People whispered when we passed by. "Look at that black family that moved in. They say the old woman is a witch." My mother tried to protect me from these comments, but it was impossible not to hear. I saw her face grow sad each time someone treated us badly. Uncle Marcus wasn't having any better luck. He would go out every day, well-dressed, looking for work in the neighborhood businesses, but always returned dejected. "No vacancies," he would say, or "They ask if I have education. When I say no, they don't want to know anything more." Not even my grandmother's beautiful pottery did people want to see. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, I heard Grandma Lizzie talking quietly with Grandpa Bill in the kitchen. "Bill, I'm worried," she was saying. "The money won't last forever. If we can't establish ourselves here, we'll have to leave." "Calm down, woman," Grandpa replied, but I could hear the worry in his voice too. "Something will turn up." I lay in my bed, my heart tight. Our new life, which had seemed like a dream at first, was turning into a nightmare. We had left a place where we were respected for another where we were rejected. The next day, when I went down for breakfast, I saw that everyone had faces like they hadn't slept well. But Grandma Lizzie, always strong, tried to keep spirits up. "We'll keep trying," she said. "Someone will give us a chance eventually." But I could see in her eyes a worry she was trying to hide. The dream of our new life was falling apart, and we didn't know what to do. Those first months in the city were quite a challenge. It was 1962 when we arrived in Atlanta, right when the civil rights movement was gaining momentum. Dr. King and others were leading protests and marches for equality. The air was charged with both hope and tension. Some neighborhoods were changing, while others fiercely resisted integration. Our yellow house stood in one of those transitional areas where black families were just beginning to move in, and many white families were responding by moving out. It was during this time that my mother, Uncle Marcus, and I decided to start studying at the evening school. Grandma Lizzie insisted strongly on this. "Knowledge is the only thing no one can take from you," she would say. "It's the key to a better life." At first, it was extremely difficult. We didn't know much, and math was a real beast. But we worked hard, going to school every single night. The prejudice at school was strong. The other students, even though they were in evening classes too, looked at us sideways. Once I heard a woman whispering to another, "Look at those black folks from the yellow house. They can't even hold a pencil properly." It all hurt, but we swallowed hard and kept going. My mother always said, "We're here to learn, not to make friends. Don't pay attention to those ignorant people." It was during this time that we met Diane. She was a black woman about my mother's age who was also studying at the evening school. The two quickly became friends. It was good to see my mother smiling again, talking with someone who wasn't family. "You know, Rachel," my mother told me one day, "Diane reminds me a lot of your Aunt Jennifer. She's really nice." Meanwhile, at home, things weren't improving. The money Grandma had in savings was running out quickly. Grandma Lizzie tried everything. She made remedies with herbs from the yard, offered midwifery services, but nothing worked. The people in the city didn't trust her. One day she came home crying. I had never seen my grandmother cry before. "They called me a devil's witch, Bill," she told Grandpa. "They said they didn't want black magic near their children." Grandpa hugged her tight and said, "These people are ignorant, Lizzie. They don't know the difference between a healer and a witch." The months passed, and the situation only got worse. Uncle Marcus couldn't find a job no matter what. My mother did some cleaning work here and there, referred by Diane, her new friend. But it wasn't much. One night after class, Grandma gathered everyone in the living room. "My children," she said seriously, "the money is running out. If we can't establish ourselves soon, we'll have to sell this house and find a simpler place, maybe even go back to the countryside." "But we can't go back to the old house." It was like someone had thrown a bucket of cold water on us, to go back after all we had been through. "But Grandma," I said, "we can't give up now. I'm almost learning to read properly." She smiled sadly. "I know, my granddaughter, but sometimes we need to take a step back to take 2 steps forward later." That night, we did something we hadn't done in a long time. We prayed together, all of us holding hands in the living room, asking God for guidance, a light at the end of the tunnel. "Lord," Grandma Lizzie prayed, "you who guided us here, now show us the way. Give us a chance to show what we know how to do." In the following days, Grandma and Grandpa began looking for cheaper houses in more distant neighborhoods. It was sad to see them going out every morning and returning discouraged at the end of the day. It was on one of those nights, coming back from school, that we noticed something different. Mrs. Stephanie Adams, who was always so animated, had a sad face, almost crying. My mother, who was always concerned about others, went to talk to her at the end of class. "Mrs. Adams, are you all right? You seem worried." The teacher tried to smile, but you could see she was forcing it. "Oh, Patricia," she said. That's my mother's name. "It's my husband. He's very sick. The doctors have said there's nothing more they can do. They've given him 2 months." My mother didn't know what to say. We were leaving the classroom when Grandma Lizzie, who had come to pick us up that day, overheard the conversation. "Excuse me," she said, entering the room. I couldn't help but overhear. "What illness does your husband have, Mrs. Adams?" Mrs. Adams looked at my grandmother suspiciously, but ended up telling her. It was a serious liver problem. I saw Grandma Lizzie's eyes light up. She knew something. "Mrs. Adams," she said, "I know you don't know me, but I have experience with medicinal plants. Would you allow me to prepare a remedy for your husband?" The teacher looked uncomfortable. You could see she didn't really believe in these things. "Mrs. Johnson, I appreciate the intention, but the best doctors in the city have already said there's no hope. My husband's family is wealthy, and they're giving us all the support." Grandma didn't give up. "I understand, but what harm could it do to try? If it doesn't help, it won't hurt either." After much insistence, Mrs. Adams finally accepted, more out of politeness than belief, I think. That night, I saw Grandma Lizzie in the backyard collecting herbs by moonlight. She was softly singing songs I had never heard before. I watched her prepare the remedy, mixing the herbs in an old mortar she had brought from the countryside. The next day, she went early to take the remedy to Mrs. Adams' house. She explained exactly how it should be taken, how many times a day. The following week was filled with anticipation. We went to school and kept an eye on the teacher, trying to see if there was any change. On the third day, I noticed she was different. She seemed less tired and even had a little smile on her face. At the end of class, she called us over. "Patricia, tell Mrs. Johnson I don't know how to thank her. He's improving. The doctors don't understand what happened, but the tests show his liver is recovering." When we told Grandma, she smiled that serene smile of hers. "It's the power of nature, Rachel. God left all the remedies at our disposal." The news spread quickly. Suddenly, that neighborhood that had previously looked at us sideways began to change. People came to seek out Grandma Lizzie, asking for remedies for this and that. It was as if a door had opened. Grandma began to be called to attend births, care for the sick. Uncle Marcus found a job as a gardener. Things started improving gradually. We continued studying, now with more enthusiasm. I saw my mother smiling more. Uncle Marcus would come home tired but happy to be working. My grandfather, being elderly and facing worse prejudice, was put to work at home by Grandma. He did everything and was happy to feel useful. One day, sitting on the porch with Grandma Lizzie, I asked, "Grandma, how did you know it would work out? That people would accept us?" She smiled, running her hand through my hair. "I didn't know, my granddaughter. But we have to have faith and persistence. God is always working, even when we can't see it." While things were slowly improving for us, something unexpected happened. Diane, that friend my mother had made at evening school, introduced her cousin to my mother. His name was Michael Davis. He was black like us. At first, I found it strange. My mother had never shown interest in anyone after what happened with Bradley Harrison, but I saw that her eyes shone differently when she talked about Michael. "He's different, Rachel," she told me one day. "He treats me with respect, as if I were important." Michael began to visit our house on weekends. He always brought something small, a fruit, a piece of cake he had made himself. Grandma Lizzie liked him from the start. "That one has a good heart," she whispered to me once. "You can see it in his eyes." And my grandmother was never wrong about people. It wasn't long before the two were dating. It was strange to see my mother all dressed up, going out hand in hand with Michael, but at the same time it was beautiful. She deserved to be happy after all she had been through. One day, after a few months of dating, Michael came to dinner at our house. After dinner, he asked to speak with everyone in the living room. My heart raced. I already imagined what was coming. Mrs. Lizzie, Mr. Bill, he began nervously. I came here today to ask for Patricia's hand in marriage. I love your daughter and want to take care of her for the rest of my life. Grandma Lizzie smiled, but I saw that her eyes were misty. If Patricia accepts, you have our blessing. My mother, with tears in her eyes, looked at me. Rachel, my child, do you accept? You know you're the most important thing in my life. I swallowed hard. It was difficult, you know. On one hand, I was happy to see my mother happy. On the other, I was afraid of losing her. If you're happy, Mum, then I'm happy, I said, trying to smile. The wedding was simple, at the courthouse. Afterward, we had a lunch at our house. Michael's family were good people. They came to the wedding. It was a day of much laughter. It was sad to see my mother packing her things to move. Michael lived on the other side of town, far from us. She wanted me to go live with them, but I didn't want to. I preferred to stay with my grandmother. The first few days were difficult, getting used to her absence. The house seemed emptier, quieter. But gradually we adapted. My mother came twice a week, taking the bus early to help Grandma with the herbs and remedies. Michael understands the importance of what we do here, she told me one day. He's even learning some things about the plants. Seeing my mother happy helped me accept the change. She had a sparkle in her eyes that I hadn't seen in many years. And Michael, well, he was a good man. He treated her with affection and respect. One day, helping Grandma in the kitchen, I confessed, "Grandma, sometimes I miss Mum. I wish she was here with us. Is it wrong for me to think like that?" Grandma put her arm around my shoulders. "Of course not, my granddaughter. It's normal to miss her. But think about it. Your mother is happy, being loved as she deserves, and she hasn't stopped being your mother." I understood what Grandma meant. My mother had been through so much, had suffered so much. It was fair that now she had a chance to be happy, to have a normal life. And so life went on. We continued with the herb work. I kept studying, now reading much better. My mother came whenever she could, sometimes bringing Michael along. We were a different family now, but still united. It wasn't long before Uncle Marcus found his match. One Sunday afternoon, he came home all smiles. A rare sight. "Uncle, what is it?" I asked curiously. "I met a girl, Rachel," he said with a gleam in his eyes. "Her name is Ashley. She works at the bakery near the workshop." Ashley was a pretty girl with an easy smile and a sweet manner. Soon she began to frequent our house, helping Grandma Lizzie with the herbs and learning some of her secrets. "That one has good hands for this," Grandma commented one day. "She'll be a great companion for Marcus." Their courtship was quick. In less than a year, Uncle Marcus announced they were getting married. They had saved good money and wanted to have a nice celebration. "You deserve it," Grandma Lizzie said. "After all we've been through, it's good to have a reason to celebrate." The news of the wedding coincided with another novelty in the family. My mother was pregnant. When she came to tell us, it was pure joy. "My daughter," Grandma Lizzie said, hugging her. "What a blessing. Another little one for our family." The day of Uncle Marcus's wedding arrived. It was a sunny Saturday, perfect for the celebration they had planned. It all happened in a party hall. There were flowers everywhere, colourful banners, tables full of delicious food. My mother was there with her 5-month belly already quite visible. She was radiant, happy with the new life she carried and with her brother's happiness. Even Aunt Jennifer came with her family to the party, and I loved seeing them again. It was at this party that I saw him for the first time, Christopher. He was a friend of Ashley's family who had come to help organize the party. Tall, light-skinned, With an easy smile, he caught attention wherever he went. I confess I felt awkward when our eyes first met. I wasn't used to this, you know. In my head, I was just Rachel, the granddaughter of the folk healer, the girl who had been through so much. But his look was different. He approached me during the party. "Hi, I'm Chris. You must be Rachel, right? Ashley talks a lot about you." I didn't know what to say. I think I mumbled a hello or something, but he didn't mind my nervousness. He started making conversation, asking me about school, about the work with herbs. "What your grandmother does is incredible," he said. "My mother always says her remedies are better than those from the pharmacy." The party flew by. Before I knew it, it was getting dark, and Chris was still there talking to me. Before leaving, he asked if he could visit me one of these days. I felt a warmth, but managed to say yes. In the days that followed, I found myself thinking about him more times than I'd like to admit. Would he really come? Had it just been party talk? But he did come the following Sunday. He showed up at our house with a bouquet of wildflowers. "For Mrs. Lizzie," he said, "a thank you for the remedies she makes for my mother." Grandma was all melted. "What a polite young man," she commented after he left. "And he couldn't take his eyes off you, Rachel." Chris's visits became more frequent. Soon we were going out together, nothing too extravagant, a walk in the park, an ice cream at Ashley's bakery. He told me he worked making furniture, that he had learned the trade from his father. "I want to have my own furniture shop one day," he said, "to make beautiful furniture that lasts a lifetime." Time passed. My little sister was born, a beautiful girl they named Emma, in honor of Michael's grandmother, who had passed away recently without meeting her great-granddaughter. I visited whenever I could, helped take care of her. It was strange to be an older sister with such an age difference, but it was also nice. She was such a perfect little black baby, so tiny, it was impossible not to be enchanted. Meanwhile, my relationship with Chris was getting more serious. He was different from any other young man I had known. He respected me, was interested in what I thought, in what I wanted from life. One day he took me to see the carpentry shop where he worked. He proudly showed the pieces he had made: tables, chairs, wardrobes, all handmade with a care that was a pleasure to see. "Rachel," he said, somewhat nervous, "I'm saving money. I want to start my own business, and, well, I wanted to know if you want to start this journey with me, as my wife." I was speechless. I didn't expect this. Not so soon. But looking into his eyes, seeing all that love and hope, I knew the answer. "Yes, Chris," I said with tears in my eyes. At that moment, I felt like the happiest person in the world. Chris hugged me tight, and I could feel his heart beating as fast as mine. But as soon as I returned home that night, a harsh reality hit me like a punch to the stomach. I was no longer a pure girl. What had happened on the plantation with Bradley Harrison was a wound I tried to forget, but that never really healed. How could I marry Chris without telling him the truth? Would it be fair to him? I spent the night tossing and turning in bed, thinking about what to do. Early in the morning, I went to look for Grandma Lizzie. She was in the yard, taking care of the herbs, as always. "Grandma," I called, my voice trembling, "I need to talk to you." She looked at me with those wise eyes of hers and said, "Come here, my granddaughter. Tell Grandma what's troubling you." We sat on the bench under the peach tree, and I poured out everything. I told her about Chris's proposal, about my initial joy, and then the weight of the truth I carried. "Grandma, I can't deceive him. It's not fair, but I'm afraid of telling him and losing him forever." Grandma Lizzie was silent for a moment, then took my hands in hers. "My granddaughter," she said softly. "The truth sometimes hurts, but it's always the best path. If Chris truly loves you, he'll understand. And if he doesn't understand, well, then perhaps he's not the right man for you. And another thing, your mother and I tried to keep that secret from you for many, many years, and you saw what happened." I knew she was right, but still, my heart ached just thinking about losing Chris. "Tell him, Rachel," Grandma continued. "Tell him everything. If he's the man I think he is, he'll love you even more for your courage and honesty." That afternoon, when Chris came to visit, I suggested we go for ice cream. As we walked to the ice cream parlor, he must have noticed I was strange because he asked several times if I was okay. We sat at a small table in the corner of the ice cream parlor. I barely touched my ice cream, my stomach knotted with nerves. "Chris," I began, my voice shaking. "I love you, but I can't marry you." I saw his eyes widen with surprise and pain. "But why, Rachel? What happened? I've already told my whole family. They're so happy." I took a deep breath, gathering all the courage I had. "I have something you need to know about me, about my past." And then, there in that ice cream parlor, with the ice cream melting forgotten on the table, I told Chris everything. I spoke about the plantation, about Bradley Harrison, about what he had done to me. I told him how we had come to end up in the city, how the house had been bought. As I spoke, I saw Chris's face go through 1,000 different emotions: anger, sadness, compassion. When I finished, I fell silent, waiting for his reaction, my heart beating so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. Chris was quiet for a time that seemed like an eternity. Then, to my surprise, he extended his hand across the table and held mine. "Rachel," he said, his voice breaking, "I love you. What happened was horrible, but it doesn't change what I feel. You're the strongest and bravest woman I know." The tears I had been holding back finally flowed. "But Chris, I'm not pure." He squeezed my hand harder. "Rachel, that has nothing to do with it. You're pure in your heart, in your soul, and that's why I love you and want to marry you." At that moment, I felt as if an enormous weight had been lifted from my shoulders. I looked into Chris's eyes and saw all the love in the world there. "Are you sure?" I asked, still insecure. He smiled that smile I loved so much. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life. This will be our secret." We left the ice cream parlor hand in hand. I was beaming. I knew we would still have challenges ahead, but now I was certain that with Chris by my side, I could face anything. That night, I told Grandma Lizzie what had happened. She hugged me tight and said, "See, my granddaughter, the truth always liberates. And now you've found a man who truly loves you." We got married in a simple ceremony at the courthouse. Afterward, we had a celebration at our house with family and closest friends. There wasn't much luxury, but there was plenty of love. We began our life together in a small but cozy house. Chris continued working at the carpentry shop, saving money for his dream. I divided my time between helping Grandma with the herbs and being a good wife. I also brought money home. Grandma earned well in the city. Usually, people paid in cash, not like in the old days when they exchanged her services for food, and I also received my share. Soon after the wedding, my mother had 2 more children with Michael. After Emma came William, named after Grandpa, and finally Lizzie, whom we called Lizzie, named after Grandma, of course. It was a joy to see my siblings growing up. Even living far away, I made a point of being present in their lives. Chris and I were blessed with 4 children. First came Marcus, named after my dear uncle. Then we had Patricia, like my mother. 2 years later, Peter was born. And finally, when I thought I wouldn't have any more children, our youngest, Sophie, arrived to brighten our home even more. It was a big family, you know. During the end-of-year holidays, everyone would gather at Grandma's house. Grandma made a point of teaching the secrets of herbs to all the children, but it was my Patricia who showed the most interest. Just like me when I was little, she was always following her great-grandmother in the yard, wanting to learn everything about the plants. "That one will carry our knowledge forward," Grandma would always say proudly. And so life followed its course. Our family grew, multiplied, but never lost that unity that made us overcome so many difficulties in the past. Each child born was another piece of love, another proof that we had managed to transform our story of pain into one of hope. Today, in 2025, at 76 years old, I look back and see how life comes full circle. It's been a long journey from that plantation in 1949 to this moment. I remember as if it were yesterday, Grandma Lizzie teaching me the secrets of herbs. "You see, my granddaughter," she would say, "life is a cycle. We are born, grow, bear fruit, and return to the earth. Our job is to help people in all these stages." I lost my Chris many years ago, a heart attack that came without warning. It was the only time my herbs couldn't help, and that still pains me to this day. He was in his furniture shop, doing what he loved most, when it happened. At least he didn't suffer. It was quick. But life goes on, right? I have my 4 children, 7 grandchildren, and 8 great-grandchildren to give me joy. And the gift that Grandma Lizzie passed on to me remains more alive than ever. Today, I'm known throughout the region as a healer. People come from far away to seek me out. They trust me more than doctors sometimes. But I'll be quite honest with you. I've never delivered a baby on my own. I helped Grandma with just 3 births, but if needed, I know how to do it. My daughter, Patricia, followed in my footsteps, just as I was. She learned everything about herbs from a young age. Today she works with me, and together we keep alive the knowledge that Grandma Lizzie left us. It's beautiful to see how people respect our work now, quite different from that difficult time when we arrived in the city. About my biological father and grandfather, I never heard from them again, just as Grandpa Bill said. Looking back on the journey I've traveled, from a little girl in a thatched house on the Harrison plantation to the 76-year-old woman I am today, I realize that life never reveals in advance what lies ahead. But one thing I'm certain of, it's the challenges and heartaches that have shaped the person I am today. Grandma Lizzie taught me that knowledge is something no one can take away from you, and that family love is the strength that helps us overcome all adversities. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope that in these words, you find the strength to face your own challenges. Remember that people can take many things from you, but they cannot take away what you know, what you've learned, and how you choose to love. That is the true legacy I want to leave for you and for everyone listening to this story. I would like to express special thanks to the Grandparent's Memories channel for inviting me to share this story. The channel's efforts to preserve and spread the stories of our generation are truly commendable. This is how we connect the past with the present, so that valuable lessons are not forgotten over time. If you find my story meaningful, please subscribe to the Grandparent's Memories channel and like this video to support them in continuing this meaningful work. Each subscription, each like, is motivation for the channel to continue seeking out and sharing valuable stories like this one.